He did a whole year preschool, half a day at preschool, half a day at the daycare provider. Toward the end of the school year, I said to them, do you think he may have autism? Do you think something's going on? And they said, oh, well, yeah, probably. But, and I was like, well, when were you going to tell me? Like, when were you going to say something?
Yeah. Welcome back to Finding Common Ground with Heather and Steve. Today we have LaShona Johnson. She lives in Ohio. She's a parent and a professional in the disability community. So we'll not only talk about her work at the Office for Children and Family Services, but we'll also get into her personal story with her son who has autism and how that inspired her to write a book. But before we do that, Steve, I was hoping that you could share a little bit about what's been going on at your house, because you've had some excitement the last few days.
Yeah, I'll be brief. We had a film crew here Friday and Saturday. It was a crew through an OPWDD initiative through Georgetown University and an international film crew that came in Friday and Saturday from morning to night. It was pretty intensive because they film every part of your life. And we gave them free access to no editing. So what they got was real and what they got was genuine, and it went over really well. They said that it went over really well, and they're coming back actually August 9th and 10th for another project.
Look at you go, Steve. A documentary. It's so neat because a lot of times when they put something on TV or it's released, it's really polished. And they make everything look a certain way, and they cut out some of the parts that, might embarrass a family. But I love that you just opened that door and you said, film us the way we are and don't cut it out, because people need to see what this looks like. So I give you a lot of props. And you're pretty humble just to say, yeah, no big deal. International film crew. They're coming back.
My wife is the one that had... Yeah, my wife's the one that probably had the most difficulty. She wanted to hide under a rock.
She wanted them to edit. No, I'm joking.
Right. Yeah, take me out. But
she did it. You did it. Good job, guys. So why don't you let the audience know a little bit more about LaShona?
Yeah, I met LaShona on, I think it was I that reached out to you, right, LaShona?
Yes.
On social media. I can't remember which one now because we've back and forth and all kinds of different things now, Messenger and Facebook and LinkedIn and having conversations about doing this podcast today. And I was really inspired by the fact that of your background. You come across as hitting so many points that that our listening audience would love to hear. Now and even in the future, because you hit on the county. You work for the county. And I'll let you get into all of that. You know some on the foster care end. Some, and here you are writing a book, and you're very familiar with autism because you live it also.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It sounds like from the teaser that Steve gave me about your book that you didn't wake up one day and just know he had autism, that it was really a journey to that moment and that diagnosis and lots of roads that you had to travel. So if you don't mind backing up a little bit and giving our audience some context to how did your story start?
Okay, well, I had a great pregnancy, no complications, none of that. After my son, who is now 13, he turned 1, I just started, looking at developmental milestones. He wasn't walking yet, but, everybody reassured me, kids, are, at different stages and that, he'll be fine. I think a few months after his first birthday, he started walking. I was like, okay, great. He had one words like ma and dad and those kinds of things. But as time went on, I just kept feeling like, I don't know, something is not quite right. Something is off. And so he went to the same daycare provider, in-home daycare provider. Shout out to Pam Williams. She's great. She was so great. She noticed not only in Mason, but some of the other kids in her daycare that she needed some extra assistance. So she called upon a program through Achievement Centers, which is a local program. They have a school and they have this program called Technical Assistance Program. And so they come in to try to make sure children who are having some issues or they have some type of developmental disability is included, like inclusive. So she came in, she did her observation. I had to sign some things. And I was like, oh, sure, go ahead, do the observation. So that evening at 7 o'clock, I get a phone call from this lady. And she's like, well, I think, I observed your son and I think some things are going on. And I was like, huh? Like, who are you calling me at 7 o'clock? So that was the light bulb, like, okay, yeah, there is something going on. But to back up, I had also reached out to early intervention myself and had them come in. And they was like, oh, not enough. He's like, oh, well, he's
Right.
walking. He can, he's playing with me and X, Y, and Z. And so they said that, he was doing okay. But I still felt in my gut that something was going on. So this lady from the technical assistance program is who got the ball rolling as far as him getting special education preschool through the local school district. She did the referral, and then we ended up with an ETR and an IEP.
Mm-hmm.
He did a whole year preschool, half a day at preschool, half a day at the daycare provider. Toward the end of the school year, I said to them, do you think he may have autism? Do you think something is going on? And they said, oh, well, yeah, probably. But, and I was like, well, when were you going to tell me? Like, when
Oh,
were you going to say
wow.
something?
Yeah.
And so they was like, well, we don't do, evaluations. And so I said, okay, you don't do evaluations. I said, that's okay. I'll go through my pediatrician,
There's
which
all
I
these
did.
silos, right? Like you get through one door and then you have to go to a
Yes.
whole different building, get through another door and stand in another
Yes.
line and see what another person says. It's not coordinated. I agree.
Not at all. And so we did I did the pediatrician. She's great. Johnny on the spot. She jumped on it, did the referral, and it went rather quickly. I was surprised because of the field I work in. I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to be waiting a couple months. I didn't. I had that meeting with the social worker at the hospital, and then maybe 4 weeks after that, the actual evaluation. So, and he was diagnosed with autism a few days before his 4th birthday.
So let's pause right there. So for your reference, I worked early intervention. I'm a school psychologist by training, and that was my first job. So I worked birth to 5. And when you said how she called at 7 o'clock at night, those were the phone calls that would make my stomach just like flip flop before I pushed the numbers on the phone and I heard the mom answer the dad. And I would just think, how am I going to say this so that they feel validated? Because I'm there because they had a feeling something was different. But how do I say it in a way that they'll hear me, and not shut down? Because I had the experience of growing up with a sister who was on the spectrum, but it was a long time ago, 50 years ago. We did not know what autism was. And so we kind of knew Aaron was Aaron, and we navigated life without a label for most of her life. We just didn't have a word for it, and that was fine. But being in that position where I'm like, I can give them the name for it. I can give them ideas of what to do about it. I try to make it positive. But in that moment, when you tell the mama, you're right, something's different, something's off, it's just really, really hard to do. And I don't think anyone can do it perfectly, but every now and then I'll be at the grocery store and someone will lock eyes with me and I think, do I know them? At the time I was evaluating 200 families a year. I was in their homes. So there were a lot of people for a long time. And they'll come up to me and say, you were so kind, or you made me feel like it was going to be okay. And look at, this is, Trevor now, and he's in college, or here, look at Jimmy, he's on the baseball team, or, we did Special Olympics this year. And they still felt connected because that first person who says it, or at least confirms it or acknowledges it, says, yeah, you're right. It's either going to be really good or really bad. So I'm glad they made the call, and I'm glad you could start that journey. But when you said you're a year into service. And he said, do you think he has autism? And they said, probably. I was like, oh my gosh, they weren't talking about it. I mean,
No.
that's kind of mind blowing, but I'm sure our audience can relate. There have to be other people who've been in that position where their team knows they're not a medical provider. They know they're technically not able to make a diagnosis. But when we see things and we know what it is, I just feel like morally, we should start dropping the hints or, leading the parent there so that they can come to terms with it. What do you think, Steve? I mean, you've gone through this process for many times with different kids.
Yeah. LaShona, I have a 35-year-old autistic son. It's probably given me most of my experience, but what's given me more of the day-to-day experience over the last 25 years or so is doing foster care. And most of the kids coming through our home have an autism. When they get pulled, and you're aware of this because you work for the county, when they get pulled, they're almost always labeled ADHD because they aren't sure. And then what happens is because there's long waiting lists for an autism diagnosis or an evaluation, we can't wait that long. With a lot of these kids, they can't wait. There's no services wrapped around them during that period. We see the signs, especially because I've had my son and then so many other kids through our house that have autism. But it's been hard to change that part of the system because the wait lists are there. And unfortunately, I can understand why you went through some of this stuff because a lot of kids are on hold before they get that label of the autism, which they need in order to get supports around them in school and at home.
As someone who works at a county level office and you're concentrating on children and families, I know the barriers. I know the bureaucracy. I work for the county as well. Different states, but I'm sure the same. Like in many ways, it's going to be the same thing. It's sad that when you're in foster care, you actually don't have access to the same things that you do when you're in your home with your biological parents. Is there any comment on that you feel comfortable sharing? Because I know it's not something you can personally fix as one person, but insights or maybe to let other foster parents know, like a suggestion or a recommendation, because that's got to be hard when you know it and there's nothing you can do.
I worked for the county for 25 years, and so I can definitely relate. But me, like any case that I had, I said, look, listen, I was advocating for them. I just didn't know what else, anything else I could do. I said, if this door isn't open, let's go call another person until we could, try to find somewhere for them to go. But sometimes, that waiting list, or sometimes when kids come into care, we don't know everything. Like this may be a child that has never been in the system. And so we're starting from scratch.
They might have never even gone to a doctor, or nothing,
right.
Nothing consistent, right? Or they're switching place to place. So they don't have this like really great medical record you can dig into. So that does make sense.
Absolutely.
That actually happened. I think I told the story on a previous podcast. We had a kid that came in our house. He was like a month short of age 8. He'd never been to school and he'd never been to the doctors since he was like 1 month old. Nothing. No shots, no nothing. And that's a shame. And again, we wouldn't know that. You wouldn't know that as a county worker.
No.
We wouldn't know that as a foster parent until we started getting some of the records started coming in. And that's kind of a shame that kind of stuff slips through and falls through the cracks. But it was quite an ordeal trying to get that kid back on track.
Yeah, it's a lot of catch up to do. Even your son growing up in the home full of love and advocacy and someone who knew how to do what you do. I mean, like you had a skill set that some parents don't have. When did you, so now he's in program, you've said to them, I think he has autism. Yeah, I think he does. Now you go to the doctor. How did it go from there? I mean, it sounds like it was quite the journey to inspire you to write the book, because there's other families that are just in those twists and turns and they get stuck and they stall out. Like you kept going. Maybe you paused every now and then, but share a little bit more about how that went for you.
So I can remember it like it was yesterday, which is, sitting there for half a day with a child that's 3 years old, can't stay still, trying to keep him busy because he had to see a developmental pediatrician, a speech therapist, and a psychologist. So it was a long day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was very long. And so then the anticipation of, okay, you got to come back next week and we'll give you the
I know.
results. I'm
We're
like,
not
can
going
you
to tell
give it
you
to me
right now.
today?
I know. Score that up. Tell me
Yeah.
what you got.
But I mean, I understood they had to, get together as a group and discuss. And so when, I went back for that appointment, I just really braced myself. And when she said it, I knew it, but I instantly just it was relief and grief all at the same time. I mean,
That's a great
so
way to
many
explain
different,
it.
yeah, so many different emotions. And at the time, my husband was like, he's not a label person. So, I'm thinking, and I had the doctor, the psychologist call him. He was very quiet, didn't say much of anything. And, after the appointment, she gave me the paperwork and explained, what the diagnosis was and suggestions for services. I called him in the car and we kind of had a little argument because he's telling me, stop being a social worker, stop being a nurse and be a
Oh,
mother.
my
I said,
goodness. Yeah.
oh, yeah. And I said, well, I would be remiss if I didn't do what I'm doing for other children. Like, I have to do this. And he said, well, you do what you need to do, but I just don't believe in labels. And I get it because he's not the only father that, feels the same way, so.
Right. And it's hard when they're part of you, right? It's almost like admitting, I don't know. I don't even want to use the word blame. It's like you're saying, like, they're part of me and they have this. And like, it's sometimes it's just a hard thing to make peace with, or you just don't want it to be true, and sometimes either parent can get stuck in that. I've seen it as the dad. That was definitely my ex-husband. I mean, he was like, you are trained to look for problems. That's what you're trying to do right now. And there's nothing going on. And I'm like, she's 8 months old and can't sit. Like, I mean, it was just like she was really falling behind. And I worked early intervention and I felt blocked from doing what she needed. And I finally just said, like you did, I'm going to do what I need to do. I'm glad he gave you that space and let you do it without, making you feel blocked. That's an important thing for marriage to survive, because lots don't, a lot of marriages don't end well under those circumstances.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. And we can talk about it today. We had a conversation about it yesterday, just how far we've come, because it was a lot of tug of war. He said, do what you need to do, but I just don't believe in labels. I don't believe in labels. I don't understand this. And, I did what I needed to do with my support team that I had. And he has come a long way. And even today, like now, maybe a week ago, Mason asked me, like, Mom, do you have autism? And I said, why are you asking that? He's like, well, does Dad have it? I said, I don't think so. I said, why are you asking this? He said, because I just want to know how I got it.
Oh, I love that. Natural curiosity, right? And we used to say that, like when I was first trained, when we'd go in the home, we'd see somebody, and if they were really profoundly on the spectrum, I mean, like there was no doubt when we walked in, do you have anyone else in your family? And we would describe that classic autism, maybe they're an engineer, or they're really into math or science, or they're really socially awkward. And they'd be like, oh, Uncle Larry, or oh, Cousin Bob. They always had like or you'd be talking to the parent and you'd be like, or maybe you, like you just had that feeling that you could see where it came from. And then there's other families, I don't know where it came from. Like I can't see anybody in front of me that looks like they're on the spectrum. So I feel like we still have a lot to learn about how it manifests, how it evolves, why it's profound in some people in stages, and then it can turn around, and other people, it stays this like steady course. So how would you describe your son's level of need, or the supports that help him?
Well, I can say, so in the very beginning, they said he was level 1 and level 2. And Mason did a lot of echolalia. Did he have speech? Yes, he was talking, but he was repeating every show, every cartoon show that he watched. And so that's when, speech, we did occupational therapy, like his coordination was off. She worked with that, puzzles. I think that worked with spatial relations and all of that different stuff and walking, the midline. And we did ABA therapy, which really, intense, he was going to preschool half a day. He would go to the daycare provider. My mother would pick him up. She would take him to the ABA place, and I would go pick him up. And this was going on like 4 times a week for like 3 years. So, it slowly turned around. To the point when, even to talk about his school journey in first grade, I went to them and said, hey, he doesn't, he's not catching on to sight words at all. Oh, it's going to be okay. I called for a meeting because I knew that I can call for a meeting at any time, And so they're like, oh, it's going to be fine. I said, well, I just want to, can we collaborate? You can tell me what what we can do. I said, because we've been beating the pavement, flashcards and all of this stuff. And it wasn't sticking. And so the intervention specialist said to me mid-year in January, oh, he can't read. I said, oh, I thought I told you that in September. And then she told me, well, I don't know when he's going to read. He has autism. I said, that's not acceptable to me. That means that you're just like, whatever. And at that point, I decided to look for another school. I took him out of public school.
Because sometimes our kids just need a different way. And Steve, I remember you mentioning, and this rang true with a lot of the people that I worked with, all the families I was teaming with, that if I could find their thing, the thing that lit them up, the thing they were passionate about, or the thing they like to memorize, and I somehow inserted myself into that and I joined them. Maybe we're jumping on the trampoline. Oh my gosh, I jumped on a trampoline for years of my life as a psychologist working with different families. I had really good leg muscles. And if you can join the child and talk about something that they love, and then I would just start spelling it, and then they would spell it back to me, and then I'd show it to them. We'd write it in the sand if we were in the sandbox, or I'd do it with stones if they collected stones. We just, however you can find that connection. And I think for your son, Steve, it was sport cards, right? If I remember right.
Yeah, that was my own son. He was having difficulty in math way back. He couldn't figure anything out. They just kept pushing him through, but he couldn't do basic adding. And I brought some sports cards in, and I says, he loves sports. You want his attention. You're going to have his attention now. Teach him the back of the baseball card, the statistics and stuff. And now it's memorized in his head. It's like that Rain Man guy. He memorizes all this stuff. He knows when the NFL draft comes out, he knows every single player. It's all memorized, and they use that to figure out math and how to do multiplication and division, their earned run averages, their batting averages, and that's how they got him to learn it. And it was because it was his special interest in sports. When the film crew was here this past weekend, I didn't guide these kids anywhere. A couple of the autistic kids, when they went in the barn, they went in where they love to go. And that's where they filmed it. And then we would get involved because that is what they like. And too many times I think they try to cookie cutter all these kids into one thing, and they might have a rec program somewhere, and they make all the kids do the same thing. All the kids that ever come through my house, I don't think there's any of them that want to ever do the same thing. They all want to do something. They want to do something different, and they got a chance to do that. And fortunately, they were able to capture that. These kids doing all kinds of things, and little things like somebody putting in a cassette, rewinding it, forwarding it, not even listening to the music, just rewinding it, forwarding it, rewinding it.
Whatever
and that kid was out. Yeah, it works.
Because it's the mechanical part of it, right? It's like cause and effect. It's like, I'm doing that. Look at that.
Yeah.
It's going to be really hard to replace those cassette tapes, Steve. They are not, they are not easy to find these days. So.
That's why we have a lot of them. But look, that kid was there over an hour, and you would never get if a therapist came in, from one of the provider agencies and worked with him, they wouldn't be able to do that for 5 minutes in some of the stuff that they wanted to do with him, because they didn't incorporate what he wanted to do. And I think when you do that, you get his captive attention and an audience throughout.
Absolutely. So does your son have anything that he's really drawn to or that lights him up?
Absolutely, he does. I mean, in the beginning, it was NASCAR. Like he wanted to be, when he was 7, he wanted to be a NASCAR driver. And my father, who's a mechanic, was all in like,
He's like,
oh,
this is
perfect.
Great. Yeah.
Yes, but he also liked trains. And so to this day, he is into model trains. But, he liked Thomas the Train, but now, he's gotten older. And so he can tell you all about model train, any model train you want to know about, the railroad, all of that. So that is his special interest. And so now, like with what Steve was saying about his son and his struggles in math, he can read great now. Now he has a math disorder. He has dyscalculia now. So I can relate to what you're saying. And I don't even, we've done tutoring. It's like out of sight, out of mind. So I truly can relate.
And I think that the technology piece is something that we need to start infusing into practice. For the longest time, they were trying to get my daughter, Devin, to handwrite things. And she has severe apraxia. Moving her arm is very, very difficult. In preschool, she learned how to write Devin. And to this day, she can write her name. And she can try to trace things. And at some point, I'm like, could we type? Could we use something? Because why are we making her do the hardest thing? I understand you want to build the muscles and you want to give it a solid effort, but she's 18. Okay, so now let's change our direction and let's think about what do we do that makes her feel like she's, having an interactive experience with other people rather than, her peers are learning about history and who, the president is, and she's learning her colors and shapes. Like at some point we have to push past that and not let it hold them back. And we have so much technology now that we didn't have even 2 years ago. So I would really highly recommend different apps and things that if trains are his interest, I guarantee you there's an app that would teach you math with a train kind of focus or theme on it. And it just made me remember Love on the Spectrum. Have you ever watched that show?
Yes. Yeah. Binge watch the whole show.
It's so good. How about you, Steve? Have you watched it?
Yep.
It's great. I don't know, but it just reminded me of that one girl on the show who just loves trains. And she was like, whoever my love interest is, they have to love trains. Like she just couldn't even have any concept that the person she falls in love with wouldn't love that too. And that's important. You have to find someone who likes your quirks and the things that we all do. We all have to have that, that you share something with somebody else. There's plenty of train fanatics, so he's in good company. What would you say? And before we started recording, you were talking about the book and that, you'd start it, put it down. What gave you that oomph? How did you get that across the finish line? Because that's a big deal. I want the audience to know the title of your book. It's, where they can find it. But how did you get yourself in a position where you could do that? Because not everybody writes a book.
So in my mind, I kept saying, I need to do this because I work with so many different families and I'm working in a school now. And so it kind of like threw me aback when, the principal would say, send them to Ms. Johnson, if it was special education or anything. And the first thing I would ask them, have you heard of the, Cuyahoga County Board of Developmental Disabilities? What is that? Have you heard of this? What is that? And I'm like, oh my goodness, and one parent said to me, I was given so many different things. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know where to go. And so that just working with these, I said, I have to do this because I know that feeling. I did it and I was overwhelmed, but I pushed myself to do it. I don't recommend people to do what I did, because I mean, we was in aquatic therapy, we was over here, over there, we were we were everywhere. So I mean, and so working with families, that really, I said, if there has to be a better way than to get all this paperwork and then try to go home and figure out what you're supposed to do, when actually you need to sit in your emotions and process what's happening. That's the first thing you really need to do.
We try to like fast forward, like for me, I wanted Devin to be okay. Like I didn't want her to have the challenges. I wanted to do whatever it took so she could just be, in my mind, who she was supposed to be. She was who she was supposed to be. She needed me to like uplift her and not take things away as much as make sure she had what she needed, and make sure people understood her. And I think as families, until we take that moment and sit with it and really think about what that means, we can't do that for other people. We can't describe our child's needs in a polite and respectful way when we're angry or grieving, right?
Yes.
Because that's what comes out. And when my daughter needed, she started having life-threatening seizures, and I'm going to get her a service dog. I just had it in my mind that this is what she needed. And lots of people agreed with me, but the school district was fighting me. Instead of me just like thinking about how to frame it, I came in like a warrior. I was going to chop down the opposition. I was going to shove it down their throat. And until this day, I think that was 8 years of my life that I fought with that school district. Maybe if I took a different approach, it would have been, maybe still a year, but maybe not 8. I mean, we got all the way up to the federal, the United States Department of Justice.
Wow.
I was like, I had Washington, D.C. knocking on their door. I'm like, now you're going to do it. But when you have that confrontational attitude, guess what? They dug their heels in. They didn't want to be found liable at that point. They almost had to defend their position. So that's very useful information, I think, for our families that are listening, that sometimes just a little bit of graciousness or curiousness when you're speaking to somebody instead of acting like you know. And if you haven't processed it, you can say that. You can say, I don't even know how I feel about this, but it seems like he could use A or B. Or have you tried C? What do you see at school? Because guess what? Our kids are different at school than they are at home. They're different at grandma's. They're different at the neighbor's house. They're just different environments, especially with autism. They learn this is okay here. This is okay there. And Steve will see that with respite. Some of these kids are terrors in the home that they're in most of the time. They come to his place and he's like, I would never know that they're giving people such a hard time because they're not doing it here. So I think part of it's environment, so that we're shaping them, and they know what's safe and that it's okay. But part of it's us. We have to, it's our approach. So tell us more about the book. What's the title?
So the title of the book is The Autism Roadmap from Early Diagnosis to Academic Success. And so it's really a guide. We start off with what is autism, just kind of breaking that down, and, what if you suspect, a diagnosis, and then the pre-diagnosis and the official diagnosis. And then it goes into how to build your support system, because I just said, hey, mom, can you do this for me every week? Hey, auntie, can you do this for me? Or, I would call my best friend who is a psychologist, and, I would run things by her. But I just, support system is so key. You need to map out who are those 3 to 5 people. Talk to them. Ask them, let them know what's going on with your child, and ask them how they can support you. And then be reciprocal and, do something for them as well.
No matter how much you're in the thick of it, you have to give back. And that is something that I've noticed that I've gotten better at. Because sometimes when you're in crisis or it's really a hard time, it's easy to shut down. And you're like, I need you right now. But that will shut people out. That's so overwhelming to that other person. So we have to keep our bearings. You know, it can feel like the end of the world or something horrible, but in all reality, it's one chapter of our story, or even one page of our story, really. You know, like we just have to hold on tight. I was talking to this mom and I was explaining Devin when she was little and how scary it was. And like, just, it was all these people in my house and I should have been okay with it. I did that, right? I was in early intervention and she's like, I know, it's so overwhelming. And I said, look at her now. You're in the beginning and you feel that and you think it's going to be forever, but it's really not. Everything changes. Everything evolves. You know, people, the things that are so hard when they're 3 are rarely hard when they're 6 or 9 or 12. I mean, you might have a new hard thing, but it's not the same. And not knowing and processing, I think, is probably the hardest stage. So having 3 to 5 people, I love that. Because you're not overwhelming one person,
right.
You know, like just throwing it all on top of one other person. That's great advice.
Yeah, because I had my core 2 or 3 people. And, you know, I didn't sit down and say, hey, what can you do for me? I mean, I told them this is what's going on with Mason. And they were like, absolutely, we're going to do whatever you need. But sometimes some people don't have that. It doesn't necessarily, it could be a support group that you're going to with other parents. It could be an organization. I mean, so, you know, you just have to figure out. And then I also, you know, talked about, it's a little chapter about father's perspective because they're important too. And they have feelings, but see, dads, they want to fix things. And this is something you can't fix.
Right. It's an acceptance.
Yes.
And it's, what will my life look like with this difference, right? Because we all kind of picture what our lives are going to be like. I'm going to have this job and someday I'm going to drive this car and I want to live in this neighborhood. And this turns everything upside down, you know, and you could just live in that moment and be sad and feel like you lost something, or you find that special bond in a different way, like the most unexpected thing. For my husband, he's a military man. He was a Marine. He fought in Iraq after 9/11. He's a Mason. He's outdoorsy, you know, and I'll never forget, he got James a BB gun. And he was so excited to teach James how to shoot a BB gun. And he was like, no, thank you. Like,
no, I don't want to do that.
He's like, it's loud. Like I don't like it. You know, like he had no interest in it. And Jim could have been upset. But then our oldest daughter's like, I'll do it. You know, like the person he didn't expect to be into it. So sometimes you just have to shift and realize, okay, he's not going to go out shooting with me, or he's not going to go, you know, maybe pour concrete with me. But there's something else that you can do. There's other things. At our house, Mario Kart is still the nightly end of the day. Okay. Like every night we have a Mario Kart championship. And now my son, who's 18, live streams the championship. He has people watching. I mean, it's kind of funny.
Oh, wow.
It's my husband and him playing. But these are the little things that may have never happened if autism wasn't part of our world. But there is beauty in it. It's not all hard. It's not all bad. But being honest about the hard parts, that helps the other families too. So thank you for sharing, you know, not just the journey, but also, you know, some of your vulnerability and sharing that part about your husband, because you guys got through it. You did it. And some people don't make that turn. They don't, you know, they are not together at the end of it. And it's nice to see that you guys found a way. So we have just a few minutes left, and I don't know if there's anything that you felt like we haven't touched on that you want to make sure, like, where can people find your book?
You can find my book on Amazon and also BarnesandNobles.com, Books A Million, Walmart, Target. So it's online pretty much everywhere.
Good for you.
So that's awesome. Where you can find the book. But I just want to say this. I want people to know, like, this diagnosis isn't the end. It's just a shift in perspective. So we have to look at it a different way. It's not the end all be all. We need to, instead of focusing on trying to fix something, let's focus on the connection, the advocacy, and then growing together. Let's, it's not the end, it's just the beginning of a new journey.
It is. And there are a lot of people walking this path. And I know that when you meet someone with autism, you've met one person with autism. I think that, when people say that, it's absolutely true, because I have my sister and 3 children with that diagnosis, and none of them are similar. I mean, they're all really their own person. So keeping that in mind too, just because you saw a documentary and you saw what profound autism looks like, doesn't mean that's what your life will look like, because you're different people and you have, a different mindset too. So that's important. And Steve, for you, when you think about this journey as somebody with a 35-year-old son, I mean, what's your perspective on what would you tell the new mom or the new dad in this situation?
You're going to get through it. Like LaShona said, you will get through it. I try to teach the parents, whether they're the adoptive parents, the foster parents, the bio parents, that you can't let autism define them. They can be much, much more than that. And we've got some of the same kids, autism, in a college programs. We've got one of them in the military who had a diagnosis of that. They can go on and do great things. One's an electrician. He's making more money than probably my wife, who's in the medical field. And so, look, there's a lot of ups and downs. Just get back up every single day and make sure. I actually think it's more important that the autistic child see what you're doing as a parent. They're watching very closely what's going on. And I think it's important that we set a good example in all of this, in every part of our day, that we're going to be standing right next to them. We're going to empower them and get them through the next stage, and then the next stage after that, and the next stage after that.
And that's what we do for all our kids, I hope, right? And I think that sometimes
Absolutely.
when you have a diagnosis, then you want somebody else to fix it. Like you want this service to come in, or this funding stream is for this. And all of a sudden, unintentionally, you've disconnected. You're not doing the things that you would do for your other child. I'm going to help my daughter get a car. And if she needs to, some money for her first down payment on a house, I'm going to help her with that, because that's what parents do. We want them to be independent and not need us, but we also know that, setbacks happen. My mom helped me when my first marriage dissolved, and I moved back in with my mom and dad. So I think parents have to have that in mind, that we can't wait for someone to come and save us. We quite literally, the people in the boardroom aren't the people who are going to save us. We are. We have to look around at each other and say, maybe my neighbor can help with that. Or look at this local business. Maybe they could, do something that would make a difference for our community, the disability community. And with all the changes federally and the funding streams being different, this is the time, guys. Be creative. This is the moment where those regulations and all the rules that maybe made your good idea not happen before, strike it up again. Talk to your local legislator. Tell the school. I'll give you a really brief example to close out the show, but my daughter's 18. She's non-speaking, visually impaired, and has life-threatening seizures. It's difficult. Her constellation of support that she needs to get through her day is tricky. But when we got to, the school bus is not coming, like you've walked across the stage, you have, you graduated, they started showing me transition options and they didn't feel right. They just you were either competitively employed or you were shredding paper. And I said, Devin, she doesn't fit either one. I just don't know where she's supposed to be, but neither option feels right. And so we found a local organization and she's been taking classes over the summer. And now I'm thinking, I know that there are barriers. There's a reason the school doesn't want to do this for the whole school year. But instead of me being mad and, fighting, I'm going to say, what barrier is in the way? What legislator do I need to talk to? Is this something OPW changes? Is this a New York State law? Is this a regulation? Because I want Devin to continue on this path. I don't want her to feel like she has to go to these two options because that's what traditionally works for most kids. And if parents keep that in mind and they're, instead of being upset, say, I had to really partner with my school. This is new. This is different. They haven't had to deal with this shifting landscape before. Things have been pretty solid for a while. Maybe we can get some really innovative things started. Maybe we can shift things. And because let me tell you, when you turn 22, at least in the state of New York, you're supposed to transition to adult services, and there's just not that many openings. So if we can marry those systems and the Department of Ed and OPW for New York State, if they were aligned, that'd be a beautiful thing. So everybody stay creative and stay open and don't always assume the worst. I feel like that's the theme of our show right now. Just keep pushing through, because even if it feels really hard now, tomorrow will be much better if you put in the work today. So thank you for coming so much. It was so nice to hear your story. I'm going to look for your book and I'm going to write mine.
Yes, and thank you for having me.
Well, Shauna, it's been a pleasure. I wanted to mention that we have a merchandise, a merch store. If somebody's interested, that's listening right now, it helps us with the studio costs. We have a website coming, and I know when we talk, LaShona, you're interested in doing something similar. So yes. Maybe someday we're going to be on your show, and we'd love to have you back.
Absolutely.
That's so great. I love it. Good stuff. Thanks, guys. Until next time.
Continue the conversation by joining our Facebook group. If you're a fan of the show, please join our supporters club. Subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your favorite listening app, but most of all, share it with your friends. Just one more click or comment can make a huge difference and help us to continue finding common ground.